What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another video / podcast of the Dynasty Dweebs. Today we're joined by P2W Fantasy. Nick here. Go ahead and say what's up, Nick.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to linking up with you guys. I know we got a little group chat on Twitter with some pages, and we're both in that, so I'm just glad to link up with somebody and happy to talk to you guys today.
Oh, yeah, man. Glad to have you here. I'm your host, Austin Biederman, joined here with Jim Brooks. Missing Zach Howitz today. Good luck on your final, man. Hopefully you pass that shit.
No.
So today we're going to be discussing DJ Moore versus JuJu Smith-Schuster Dynasty outlook. So, we'll be comparing them on a 3-year ideal look. So we're going to start off with DJ Moore. We're going to be analyzing their 2018 and 2019 seasons, and that will hopefully all leave us with a decision at the end of this video. So let's start off with DJ Moore's stats in 2018. He went for 55 receptions on 82 targets, 788 yards, 2 touchdowns. He averaged 7.8 yards after catch, and his longest reception was 78 yards. So from 2018 to 2019, he went for 87 receptions on 135 targets, 1,175 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.5 yards after catch, and his longest reception was 52 yards. So what are your guys' thoughts on DJ Moore from 2018 to 2019?
Well, starting off, you can just see there's a significant increase in his targets and receptions from that, and obviously the yards come with that. Now, with what he dealt with last year at quarterback was obviously less ideal than Cam Newton the whole year of 2018. So I feel like with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm this year coming up, he's going to be probably roughly around the same amount of targets, you'd imagine. 135 targets last year is a pretty good amount.
Yeah.
Hopefully he kind of gets closer to 100 receptions at that point if he can get his percentage up.
What do you think?
The yards after catch.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
I'm sorry. You said the yards after catch for 2019 was like 4.5, right?
Yeah, he did 4.5 in 2019, 7.8 in 2018.
Yeah, I was going to say 4.5 yards after catch is a pretty low statistic but I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, I think just going off a little bit what you said there, looking at the change of quarterback, that's a big difference, I think, going into this year. I think Kyle Allen had some good games, but I was looking a little bit at his stats and his like completion percentage and QBR and passer ratings were pretty poor. So I think as far as like quarterback play goes, DJ Moore progressed, but with a lesser quarterback. I know the touchdowns weren't really there for DJ this year. I think he had 4, might have been mentioned.
Yeah, he had 4. Yeah,
4 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I was looking at one of my leagues and looking at the point totals, and he had, I think, 12 games with 12-plus points, 8 games with 15 or more points, 3 at 20 or more points, and then 1 game, I think he was over 30. I think he was like 31 something. So I think he showed this year that he could be pretty efficient even with a quarterback that's pretty shaky. So my outlook for DJ in this year is going to be interesting, but I think he has a quarterback that's a little bit more competent. So if he produced pretty well with the kind of average to below average quarterback, I can't see him regressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree. So now if we go over the wide receiver competition on the team, not a lot has changed except they've added Robbie Anderson on the team. So they have Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Seth Roberts, Ian Thomas at tight end, and obviously Christian McCaffrey eats up a lot of the volume. So I think the only thing here is, Robbie Anderson, he usually takes the deep ball. That's about it. He's not a huge threat, and I don't see Seth Roberts being anything, not too much of an addition, just a serviceable receiver. It's going to be Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson going at it. and then Christian McCaffrey. Not too worried about Ian Thomas. Maybe a couple of touchdowns for him this year. But what I thought was interesting is, are you guys set that Teddy Bridgewater will remain the starter? Or I don't know if you watched P.J. Walker at all for the XFL.
From XFL.
But he's also not a bad player. I mean, everyone says Teddy Bridgewater is a quote game manager. So I think we could see some quarterback competition.
I can't imagine that PJ Walker is going to be the starter day one or anything. Maybe if Teddy performs poorly and he gets benched at some point.
So I guess more importantly, do you guys think that Robbie Anderson is going to regress DJ Moore at all, or it's just going to help him out, taking pressure off him?
I think, if anything, Robbie Anderson isn't necessarily a threat to DJ Moore. It kind of helps him space the field, spread the field out. The one who would eat at him the most is obviously McCaffrey. And depending how much, if they keep up his volume with Teddy Bridgewater, just doing a lot of checkdowns and seeing how much his volume stays with the run game. But
yeah, I think go ahead.
I just think the pieces around DJ Moore kind of solidifies him as the go-to number one receiver on this team. And the pieces with Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson just kind of accentuate DJ Moore just being the highlight number one guy.
Yeah, I agree with that point. And I mean, McCaffrey probably will be the number one targeted guy on that team, or fight for that. But no, I'm just thinking just with the amount of targets and catches that guy had. But I think Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel might poke at each other a little bit. I'm in the boat that Robbie Anderson's a little bit of an overrated name through the years. Hasn't really been super efficient and consistent. I like Curtis Samuel personally better. But I think kind of going off of what you said, I think this year DJ was in the top like 10 to 13 in targets for the year. I think Carolina is a system. I know they have a new head coach, but I think they trust him as their go-to guy, and he proved he could be that go-to guy. So as far as the Curtis Samuels and the Robbie Andersons and Ian Thomas being a little bit more involved, I think they'll get their pieces, but it's going to be a lot more centered on McCaffrey with the extension of DJ Moore. So,
yeah. So just one more thing to throw out before we move on to JuJu, which I thought is something we definitely should focus in on, is the division itself is a very high-scoring division. They have to play Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay. This team's going to have to put up a lot of points to keep up with all three of those teams. So I think that will also help DJ Moore's value out a lot this year. Is because, I mean, Tampa Bay, they're not getting any worse. They only got better. Debatably, we'll see. Putting up points-wise with Tom Brady, we'll see. But, you know, they got to compete.
Yeah, I think Teddy. I think this will be a big eye opener too for Teddy, because I know he took some knocks on being more of a short to mid range thrower and things like that. But if you really look at him as a starter through the years, I mean, back on the Vikings, he had like Cordell Patterson and like Mike Wallace and a young Stephon Diggs. He never really had like so many options. And even this past year when he stepped up for Drew Brees, the receiving core for the Saints was Michael Thomas, and then some Jared Cook and some other guys. So I think with having these weapons, and I think a reliable one like DJ on a team like you're saying that might be trailing in some games or might have some high-scoring games, I think will boost his value and also DJ's value.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure you can see a bunch of fourth quarter scoring in a lot of these divisional games that kind of throw just some garbage points if they're behind and whatnot, if they're just trying to get back into games.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's go ahead and check out what JuJu's got. A little more interesting jump between 2019 2018. A lot of difference here. So in 2018, he went 111 receptions on 166 targets, 1,426 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaged 5.6 yards after catch, and his longest reception was 97 yards. 2019, 42 receptions on 69 targets, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaged 5.8 yards per catch, 76 yards was his longest reception. Now, I understand that people are, not as high on JuJu because he was injured last year. The quarterback play was bad. He didn't put up the numbers. We're going to say because of the quarterbacks. But what we have to remember is in 2018 he had Antonio Brown, where you have to the fine line is between is Antonio Brown the reason that JuJu got open so often, or is it because JuJu he is an elite receiver, which is I guess what we have to decide.
I want to say Antonio Brown is just this past decade has been outright one of the best players in the NFL. And that has to attribute to JuJu's success early on. But even with the poor quarterback play, now JuJu missed 4 games this past year. He started 12 games and had 70 targets. Playing in 4 extra games in 2018 and getting 96 extra targets is just there's no way to kind of account for that. That just shows not necessarily a regression, but it just seems like he's not finding ways to get the ball. Like, there's no other way about it. You just see this is a drastic change. Yeah. Now, obviously, losing Antonio Brown makes that comparison so much more difficult. And his receivers, hopefully, this year step up and improve even more, like Deontay Johnson, James Washington. They put up Eric Ebron at tight end. And obviously having Ben Roethlisberger back is going to make a huge difference. So maybe we'll see more of what we should expect out of JuJu Smith.
Yeah, I think the 4 games that we look at, it looks like weeks 12 through 15. He came back 16 and 17, but who knows if he was even healthy at that point because he was very low utilized and his efficiency was pretty bad. But I think in 2018, having that 1,400-plus yard season, he was 4th or 5th in both yards and in targets that year. I think that kind of displays the talent he has. As far as was that supplemented by everybody's eyes on the best receiver in a decade? Potentially. I think losing Big Ben was obviously a major hit to his value just because Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, who played a couple of games, they were just really poor. But yeah, I mean, going into this next season, it's going to be interesting to see if he can be that number one guy with his quarterback because looking at DJ, who we just talked about, we've seen him this season. He was the number one guy as far as receivers go. He performed. We have to see, like, JuJu, you're going to be the number one guy. No more Antonio Brown. Can you be the focal point of the passing attack and be consistent with our quarterback? And I think him and Big Ben got a good connection. You guys probably seen the video that just came out, and he was already working out with him. Yeah, it was a good video. So, yeah, I think it's just it'll be interesting. They did add Eric Ebron. He's going to be a major red zone target. Also, Chase Claypool's a big bully that might, take some targets here and there. He's a little bit different than James Washington and Deontay. A lot of guys are high on. Yeah, a lot of guys are high on Deontay too. I'm not super high on him, but again, we'll see next year. What will JuJu do as the number one target?
Right. So I guess a good question is when we look at wide receiver competition, you said Chase Claypool, James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Eric Ebron. Not so much have to worry about the running back situation because James Conner's not too active in the passing game compared to McCaffrey. So do you guys think DJ Moore has more competition on the Panthers or JuJu has more competition on the Steelers fighting for targets?
I'd have to imagine DJ Moore. I think there's more players that have kind of shown to be reliable, like average NFL players that can get a job done for you.
Yeah, I hear you. Like
and there's
Curtis
still a lot
Samuel
of
and Robbie
unproven
Anderson
players on the
have both
Steelers.
proven to be serviceable guys compared to James Washington, Deontay Johnson haven't proven to be reliable receivers, you could say, I guess.
Yeah.
It's that's tough because I think I'd take Curtis Samuel as a 2 over I'd take Deontay Johnson. A lot of people would argue with you on Twitter because everyone fell in love with him.
Everyone loves Deontay, yeah.
I know, yeah. I'm not saying he's a bad player. or he doesn't have good value, but I'm not super high in him. I think Curtis Samuel's a bit better. I think Eric Ebron's a better red zone target than Ian Thomas might be, but I guess we'll see. They do have McCaffrey eating up a lot of targets, so DJ might have more to deal with, but we also have the aspect of Big Ben going maybe deep to guys like Johnson and James Washington versus what Teddy's going to do. So there's it's a little bit of a different aspect, I guess, from both teams.
Yeah, and then the only thing else to note with JuJu is if Big Ben was to go down again or we see a regression, their backups are nothing compared to – I like the Panthers' backups. I think Will Grier, I think he'll definitely be better than Hodges and even P.J. Walker, better than Duck Hodges or Mason Rudolph. So
Not a fan really of any of their backups.
But I'd rather have them than Rudolph or Hodges is what I'm saying. So a couple pros I have.
They even have
here.
Paxton Lynch.
Yes, they did add him and JT Barrett also.
Yeah.
So a couple pros. Mike Tomlin offense. Mike Tomlin knows how to run a team. We have a new head coach in Carolina. Yep. We haven't seen anything yet. That's a con to the Panthers.
I would also argue that the defenses that you have to verse for the Steelers is also pretty – with the Ravens. The Browns' defense is nothing to joke about. They have a bunch of really good players, but can they put it together as a team?
Probably not. They never do.
One of these
good on paper,
they'll try. Yeah. There's so much talent. You have to – it's still going to be difficult when you have guys like – well, depending on what happens with Myles Garrett, they still have Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams. All those guys are really good players.
So do you guys think these guys – so before we make our decisions on who you would rather have in a dynasty league, and then we'll go over redraft who you would rather have, but do you think these guys are being drafted pretty closely together in dynasty, or is one going way ahead of the other one in a startup dynasty draft, that you could say, for the first year?
I think it's about preference because I think JuJu is a big name that is, he wasn't he on the cover of Madden, or he was featured on Madden, and he appears in all these commercials, and he's a household name. I think some people like that and still have a preference for him. I'm higher on DJ Moore than a lot of guys, so I'd probably draft him before other people would. But I was looking at just some dynasty rankings earlier, and I looked at Fantasy Pros. They combined theirs, and they got DJ at 15, I think, overall, and JuJu at 14. So they're pretty close. And then I looked at Mike Clay, and he had them at DJ was wide receiver 7, JuJu was wide receiver 11. So I think they're very, very tight.
Very debatable guys. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it really comes down to preference. You have guys like how you're saying JuJu's kind of more in the spotlight, more of a social media star. DJ Moore's kind of a guy who reminds me exactly like Nick Chubb. He just kind of super quiet, reserved, and just works his ass off kind of player. And those are guys you always just want on your team. I think you can't really go wrong with either player. Whoever kind of falls to you, depending on what your team looks like, if you're trading for a player. If I had to choose one.
All right, so you're gonna make your decision.
I'm taking
so we'll do
DJ Moore.
All right, you're taking DJ.
I would take DJ Moore.
All right, so that's your bet. DJ Moore has a better fantasy season. I'm gonna say JuJu has a better. I think JuJu for the next 3 years. I think he'll outbeat DJ Moore.
So we're talking dynasty, right?
Yeah, let's say dynasty. Let's talk dynasty.
So JuJu's on a contract year, right?
Is it this year or next year?
It should be next year.
Is it?
If it's a 5-year, it would be the following year. Or if it's a 5-year contract, I'm not sure. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I was trying to Google it.
I would think that if
I think this is his contract year, actually.
No matter what.
Well, what will be interesting though is I've read up on, and me and my brother, who's part of the P2 brand, we've been kind of going back and forth. But there's a lot of rumors around that they're going to cut ties. They may cut ties with JuJu and James Conner, because I think they both might be on their contract year or a year out, like one of those two. So from a dynasty perspective, I mean, think about two things. If he does stay in the Steelers, Big Ben, 38 years old, how many more solid years are we going to have with him?
Don't know who next,
who's going to be next, but also what if he goes somewhere else and he's got to compete with somebody else for targets and doesn't work out. I mean, he's very talented. I'm gonna go with my dynasty pick. I'm wearing the JuJu jersey, but I'm gonna go with DJ Moore just because I'm a bit higher end DJ because he's proved that he could be the number one wide receiver on his team. I think he showed a lot of consistency this year with a kind of crappy quarterback situation. And I think his overall situation on the Panthers is going to remain pretty consistent over the next couple of years versus JuJu, who still has to really prove he's the number one wide receiver without a top name like Antonio Brown. And we don't really know what his future looks like. So that's what separates them for me.
All right, well said. Anything else to add before we wrap this up? You guys good?
It's just such a tough. These guys are so comparable. I mean,
yep.
They both weigh like 215 pounds. They're like a 2-inch height difference. They're the same age. It's two very similar guys in similar roles with the team.
You know what's crazy?
It's really a toss-up.
They're both 23, right?
Mm-hmm. DJ Moore is actually older, I believe. No, he's a couple months younger.
I feel like they're the closest in the rankings, like to compare two guys. Like,
plus, what's crazy too is I'm just looking up the age. Pretty sure they're
JuJu's 23, 179 days. DJ Moore's 23, 35 days.
Listen to these names. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you guys had your rookie drafts or not. Pittman Jr., Mims, and Ayuk, who just got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those guys are 22. Ruggs, Judy, Lamb, Jefferson, Rieger, those guys are all 21. So DJ Moore and JuJu are literally like 2 years older than all these rookies coming in, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. And like JuJu was how old in 2018 when he posted up those numbers? Like,
he would have been 22.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's literally crazy. So, I don't know.
He's the youngest player in this draft.
These are going to be two guys. It's going to be awesome to watch this year for sure. Both new QBs, I mean, they both really should progress. I mean, JuJu's easily should progress based off his stats from last year, but.
Yeah, 100%. Barring injury.
Yeah, you'd hope so, at least if you're an owner. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you had JuJu in Dynasty, would you be holding on to him, Nick, or would you be trying to sell?
I had him in I have 2 Dynasty leagues, and then I messed around with some other leagues. But I actually sold him in one of my Dynasty leagues for, I think it was for Boyd and like a very early second round pick and a 10-man. So I ended up cutting ties with him, but hopefully I don't regret it too much. So.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tyler Boyd, so.
Yeah, I got Vaughn with it, so.
Second round pick, so don't look back now, man.
Yeah, I will say, I feel like with JuJu, the best thing to do is holding him, just because coming off of the low season he did have, I think you could probably try and get more out. Depending on, then it kind of falls to, does he get re-signed? Does he go to a new team? Because the Steelers obviously aren't used to really giving their receivers that they end up drafting another contract. You've seen it all over the last decade.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, that's a great point that Nick brought up about the contract thing, because like that might be why people are so high on Deontay Johnson. Like, if he's going to be the next guy up, it could be Claypool, we don't know, but that's going to be interesting. If JuJu leaves, like, who's going to be the guy that steps up in the offense?
They draft another receiver.
Maybe.
Who knows?
And
then whoever that quarterback's going to be too. What if 3 years from now they keep JuJu and they're still hanging on to Mason Rudolph, hoping that something clicks? Who knows?
Yeah, that's true too.
Hopefully not, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. You heard it here. We got 2 DJ Moores, 1 JuJu vote. Hope you guys pick the right guy in your leagues. Thanks for joining us, Nick. Shout out to your channel, to your Twitter and blog again, P2W Fantasy. Is that the @ on Twitter?
Yeah, it's at P2W Fantasy. Yeah, catch us on Twitter. We have a website, but most everything's streamlined through the Twitter page. So,
All right. Thanks for joining us, man.
thanks for having me.